Hello, once again. I welcome you back into today's tutorial. So today's tutorial, we're going to learn how to use Greenbone to scan for vulnerability. In our previous class, we learned how we can install Greenbone on our virtual box and how we can install OWASP on our virtual box. So today we're going to learn how we can use Greenbone to scan OWASP and discover some weaknesses on it. So the first thing we're going to do is that we power on our two machine. So once we power on our Greenbone and our OWASP, you're going to get the IP address of each machine. So here is the IP address of our Greenbone. So once you get the IP address of your Greenbone, the next thing we need to do is to go to your all right. So once you are in your browser, put the IP address of your Greenbone on your browser. So once you put the IP address, hit enter key. So once you hit enter key, you're going to see a message. Click on advance and click on continue. So once you click on continue, you're going to be landed on Greenbone web page. It's going to asking you to input your username and password. And if you can remember, when we are learning how to create this lab, we log into the Greenbone and we created our username and password. So we're going to be logging in with the information that we created in our previous class. So you'll be logging in with the information. Once you log in, you'll be inside your Greenbone. So the first thing we're going to be doing right now is that anytime you want to scan inside this Greenbone, you need to enter. I'm coming, guys. So you need to enter on configuration. Anytime you scan in on your Greenbone, click on your configuration. So once you click on configuration, you're going to go to where we have a credential. Click on credential. So here it's going to let you know that there's non-credential. You need to click on this icon here to create a new credential. So when you're creating a new credential, it's going to be asking you what's the name of the credential. So I'm going to name this guy here as a OWASP. OWASP. And what's the comment do you want to give it? So you can just name it scanning for vulnerability. You can name it scanning for vulnerability, and the credential type will be based on username and password. So allow insecure use, leave it on no, auto generate, leave it on no. So what's the username? We're going to be using root because the victim that we want to scan OWASP, his username is a root. Put the root, and the password of the OWASP is a OWASP BWA. That is the password. OWASP BWA. That is the password. So the type of scanning that we want to carry out right now is a credential scan. So credential scan is good than what we're talking about, not credential scan. So anytime we are scanning a network and we are using a credential scan, it's going to come out with a legit result than when we are talking about non-credential scan. So here we're going to click on save. So once we click on save, the next thing we'll go to assets and we'll go to where we have a host. So when we head to host, it's going to tell you there's no host here, and we will use the same icon to create a new host. So we're going to put the IP address of the host, which is the IP address of our OWASP. So if I go back to my OWASP and I type ifconfig, this guy is going to show what the IP address of our OWASP is. So we're going to put the IP address here, which is 172.20.10.3. That is the IP address of our OWASP, and you click on save. So once you click on save, the next thing is to head to where we have a scan. Once you head the scan, you come here and you're going to see a new scan. So click on new scan. So once you are in a new scan, it's going to ask you what is the name of the scan. I will just name it scanning my OWASP. Scanning my OWASP. So you can actually name it anything you want. And I will name it vulnerable. I will use a comment as a vulnerability scanning. So this guy is going to ask you what is the scan target. So you're going to use this icon here to create a target. The name of the target will be OWASP, which is the victim that we are scanning from. So the comment as well, you can use vulnerability scanning. And here is going to ask you the host, ask you for the IP address of the host. But here we have option here. The first option say manual. Manual means that anytime you are scanning a single devices, you can manually add the IP address. But if I'm scanning a multiple device, I can use from file. What does that mean is that I need to open Notepad on my system and I will add all the IP address of the devices that I want to scan, and I'm going to save it as a file, and I can come here and navigate to wherever the file located on my system. So I'm going to manually add the IP address of the OWASP, which is a 172.20.10.3. The next option here is a exclude host. What does exclude mean is that anytime I'm carrying out a vulnerability scanning for a large number of devices, anytime I don't want some devices to be among those devices that I want to scan, I'm going to be using this exclude option. I can exclude that particular IP address of the devices that I don't want to be among my scanning. But here, I'm not doing anything excluding. I will leave that option like that. So allow simultaneous scanning via multiple IP. Leave it yes, because we want to scan more than only one IP. So the next thing here, we're adding it to port list. Once you are in a port list, expand it. You're going to have a lot of options. The first one here is a all IANA assigned TCP. The second is a all IANA assigned TCP and UDP, and the third is a all TCP and the Nmap top 100 UDP. So here, what we're going to choose, you can actually choose for any option that we want to use there. But what I will be going for here is a all IANA assigned TCP and UDP to scan both TCP and UDP. So the alive test, we're going to be using config default, scan config default. But anytime you are scanning for live devices, you'll be using consider alive, so that your scan will scan all the devices that is active. But here you can actually, we are going to be using that scan config default. The next thing here is a credential scan. This credential, we have a lot of options here: SSH, SMB, ES, XR, and SNMP. Anytime you're scanning for a Linux operating system, you're going to be making use of the SSH. Anytime you are scanning for a Windows, you'll be using SMB. Anytime you are scanning for a virtual network, you'll be using ES, XI. And anytime you are scanning another network elsewhere, you'll be using SNMP. So here we are scanning OWASP, and OWASP is a Linux operating system. So we're going to drag down on SSH and we choose our credential, which is the first credential that we added before we start the scanning. So after that, we're going to drag down to where you're going to see save. Click on save. So once you click on save, add result to asset, yes, all those things is okay, leave them on yes, yes. The next thing is a quality of detection, leave it on 70%. We are telling this guy is that anytime you are scanning for vulnerability, before you can detect a weakness and tell us, you must be 70% sure. So we leave it like that. Everything, the scan config, full and fast, scanner, OpenVAS defaults. Yeah, leave everything like that. Everything is good. So you drag down to where you see a save. Everything here is good. Don't touch anything here. So down to where we see save. Once you see save, your scan will be down here. Your scan will be down here, but you need to go ahead and click on start to start the scanning. Once it starts, this guy will move from requested to queue. From queue is now going to be scanning. So that's how you can make use of a Greenbone to scan for any system and to discover a vulnerability. But the first option we are using new scan. So there's another option I want to explain to you right now. So if you click on task, you're going to see second icon here. This second icon here is a task wizard. We can actually use a task wizard to scan, but this task wizard is just like a non-credential scan. It's not going to ask you for any information. It will just going to ask you for only the IP address of the victim. And you can actually put the IP address of the victim and you click on start scan. Immediately, this guy is going to start the scanning. So those are the options, or that's how you can use to scan and discover a vulnerability on a system. So you can actually follow this step here and do your own. So the next thing we'll be waiting for here is to wait for the result of this particular scanning. So in the next video, we're going to see the result and we're going to talk and we're going to explain all those results and learn how everything is in the next video.